Pluribus Episode 8 has just been released on Apple TV, and we get an episode that makes things quite complicated going into next week's finale. Manousos is on the verge of meeting Carol, but he's just about getting over his infection. And Carol is either playing a much smarter game with the hive mind or genuinely starting to appreciate them more. So in this spoiler review and explained analysis, I'm going to be giving you my breakdown of Pluribus Episode 8, entitled Charm Offensive, alongside discussing my general thoughts towards it. Before I get into it though, if you want to see much more on Season 1 of Pluribus, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating and subscribing to the channel. But without further ado, let's dive into my review and breakdown of Pluribus Episode 8. So Episode 8 of Pluribus raises some of the series' most pressing and unsettling questions by slowing the narrative down and forcing the viewer to sit inside Carol's emotional and moral uncertainty. One of the central questions the episode asks is what individuality is worth when isolation becomes unbearable. Through Carol's growing closeness with Zosia, the episode challenges the idea of whether her autonomy is the way forward. For much of the previous episodes, Carol has defined herself by resistance to the hive mind, yet Episode 8 places her in situations where that resistance might feel costly. The episode asks whether choosing connection amounts to surrender, even with something claiming to be alien. Essentially, if a system can offer understanding, safety, and emotional fulfillment, does rejecting it automatically make one morally right or simply lonely? At the same time, it doesn't give us a clear position of where Carol stands on everything, and I think that's purposeful, going into a potentially big decision that she has to make come the finale. Anyway, before we get to all of those questions surrounding Carol, the episode opens on the other side of things with Manousos. After being badly injured following his trek through the Darien Gap, Manousos awakens in a hospital in Panama, disoriented and weak but alive. He's under the care of the others after they rescued him, and we see immediately that he hasn't been defeated by his ordeal. He's still completely driven to continue his mission towards Carol. Despite the others' cautions about his health and their clear intent to help him recover, he drags the doctor outside of his room with a knife held at his throat and insists on leaving. He also pays a massive medical bill, showing he doesn't want any help from them on that front either. And in doing so, he specifically mentions that it's for real people, not the others who have taken over. Determined to drive onward towards the United States and Carol's address, he leaves alone, still recovering from his infection. The sequence underscores his stubbornness and singular focus, making it clear that his journey, both physical and ideological, is far from over. Meanwhile, back in Albuquerque, Carol Sturker's relationship with the others begins to shift in a way that feels almost tactical, but is further laden with emotional complexity. After weeks of isolation and pushing everyone away, Carol is still reeling from loneliness, and Zosia, the other who responded to Carol's huge painted message, has come back. And the first moments of Carol's day with Zosia shows them navigating ordinary experiences together. They end up playing cards, as most of the board games that Carol owns would result in Zosia having an advantage. After this quiet opening though, one of the following scenes has Zosia give Carol a tour of how the others live. We learn that they sleep in communal spaces like stadiums, malls and churches. Carol, who has long resisted connection with the joined, stays with them through this nighttime communal rest, and it's awkward, illuminating and emotionally disarming for her, especially being someone who is fiercely attached to autonomy. As the episode unfolds into the next day, Carol and Zosia continue to share simple pleasures, whether it be eating, walking or talking. The narrative here is less about big revelations and more about whether there has been an unsettling flaw in Carol's defences. Zosia even shows Carol the potential deeper truth about the origin of the RNA signal. She tells her that it came from Kepler 22b, a planet hundreds of light years away. She says that what the Hive have done has cosmic implications, and that they plan to build a massive antenna to transmit the signal back out into space. This information hints at the ambitions for the Hive beyond simple human assimilation to other planets. Maybe we are heading towards a deeper commentary on humanity's place in the universe, or maybe it's commentary on how manipulative the hive mind truly is, in that it wants to control not just things on Earth but beyond. Kepler 22b is a confirmed exoplanet that was identified in 2011 using NASA's Kepler Space Telescope. Its discovery was especially significant because it was one of the first planets found within the habitable zone of a star similar to our Sun, and the planet lies at about 640 light-years away. Being in the Goldilocks zone means Kepler 22b orbits at just the right distance for conditions that could support liquid water on its surface. Although this doesn't prove that life exists there, it does make the planet an intriguing target for scientific study. Kepler takes roughly 290 days to orbit its star and has a radius of about 2.4 times that of Earth, classifying it as a super-Earth. Furthermore, there's the following important scene between Zosia and Carol at a diner, and we learn of how this place has a personal resonance for Carol's writing career. Carol remembers it as a place where she once felt warmth in her creativity, only to learn that the diner had burned down long ago and that the others rebuilt it entirely for her sake in this moment. I think this scene perfectly encapsulates the tension of the episode within Carol. The others want to give Carol meaning and comfort, but their gestures, no matter how generous, are anchored in something fundamentally alien. So in recognizing this, Carol abruptly leaves and returns home, troubled by the unsettling level of control implicit in their kindness. It's important to note that through all these moments, Carol continues to write things down about the hive mind on her hidden whiteboard. Along with the details about Kepler 22b, she writes down that the giant antenna is being constructed and that enormous amounts of the world's energy is being used to broadcast a signal into space. Something to note about all this Kepler 22b information is that if that planet received the same signal and later passed it along, then Earth may just be the next stop in a chain that has been continuing for years. In this cycle, each civilization would become part of the collective mind, builds the technology to transmit the signal, and then hands it off to the next world. From that perspective, it doesn't give us an answer on whether the others are truly malicious, but their help isn't altruistic either, as it's simply functional. In the process, countless cultures, identities, and possibly entire species may have disappeared, just as Earths are now being lost too. We then get to the emotional pivot of the episode when later that night we find out why Carol left the diner. What begins with shared vulnerability and an honest exchange from Carol about liking Zosia but feeling that none of what has happened is right, the moment climaxes in a sudden kiss. While we knew that Carol fancied Zosia, it was surprising to see that in thinking about Carol's long-held bitterness towards the others as a collective. And on top of this, they end up spending the night together. So on one side, you could say that Carol has changed a bit and her transformation isn't framed as surrender, but more in the sense that connection, in whatever form it takes, can be powerful. What I actually think is happening here though, is that Carol is playing a greater game of charm offensive no matter how she feels towards Zosia. Although the show never fully spells it out, I think the Wycaro chapter is strongly implied to be a personal memory aid or rule set that Carol uses to structure her thinking. I think it represents Carol's insistence on mental autonomy and is a reminder to herself not to surrender her reasoning to emotional comfort. In episode 8, the fact that she keeps writing Wycaro even as she grows emotionally closer to Zosia is crucial. It shows that Carol may appear to soften, but internally she is still resisting. So her connection to the hive is not naive acceptance, it's cautious, analytical, and possibly strategic. Wycaro is Kara's anchor in a world where thinking independently is increasingly rare. And it may be her externalizing her thoughts in story form so that the hive doesn't see it that way. The reason I believe this is because we learn that she altered Raban to be a woman when she got Zosia to read her first chapter. This is exactly what the hive did when Carol found a weird resemblance in Zosia to Raban at the start of the season. So while Carol is being invited by the hive to be happy, to stop thinking about ways to stop them, and to stop being alone, I think that the continued presence of Wycaro, her writing a new chapter, and the whiteboard of notes in this episode signals to us that Carol has not crossed that line yet. And this brings us to the final scenes of episode 8. We learn that some time has passed since Carol and Zosia's kiss, with it roughly being about 2 weeks. Zosia still lives with her, and it's clear that their relationship has grown into something more. Zosia recounts a memory of the real Zosia and is getting better at using the phrase I instead of we. This scene makes us wonder whether Carol could tap into Zosia's hive state down the line and allow the real Zosia that was taken over to speak freely. It was interesting to hear Zosia talk the way she did, and it may be the result of Carol's continuing charm offensive. And the other thing that happens in this scene is that Zosia warns Carol that Manousos is closing in. It suggests that he is getting close to the US-Mexico border and setting up the impending meeting between them. Zosia seemed quite stunned by this, and her reaction left me a bit confused because you'd think the hive would already know how far he was away and that he was coming towards Carol, so surely that's not a surprise to them. Still, the episode ends with a sense of impending tension, and both narrative threads look to be converging as the season heads into its finale. It'll be interesting to see how they frame Carol in relation to Manousos when they meet, and if she was playing a smarter game in episode 8, then surely she'd choose the side of Manousos. But whatever happens, I think Carol will have a choice to make. Episode 8 sets up the looming confrontation between personal loyalty and global stakes, potentially reflecting why next week's episode is titled La Chica o El Mundo, meaning the girl or the world. I think Carol might have to make a choice between Zosia and the collective or Manousos and the world. And that's an interesting aspect to think about, especially when Manousos is a singular individual and Zosia is a part of a wider whole with the collective. So in saying all of this, I think the major question that episode 8 continues to explore is whether the hive mind is genuinely compassionate. The show still doesn't have a clear antagonist to what's going on, as it continues to put a focal point on whether humanity's traditional ideals in individual struggle, sacrifice and suffering are inherently more ethical than a system that eliminates pain at the cost of selfhood. By the episode's end, we are at a philosophical crossroad that reframes the series not as a battle between good and evil, but as a meditation on what kind of existence we are willing to choose. We don't have an answer on what side Carol has taken, but the Wycaro hints and how Zosia talks to her at the end make me think that Carol is just playing a much smarter game now. While the episode tries to make you believe that the hive have successfully carried out their charm offensive, the real one seems to be coming from Carol. And that's not to say that she doesn't like Zosia, as I think she truly does. But returning the world to a place of individual thinking means more to her than joining the collective. So what did I think of the penultimate episode of Season 1? Well, episode 8 of Pluribus represents a tonal shift from the lingering sadness of earlier installments towards something more emotionally charged and thematically rich. After Carol Sturka's prolonged isolation, she finally reconnects with Zosia in a way that blurs the boundaries between dependency, intimacy, and existential crisis. At the same time, the episode balances this deeply personal plot with a broader look at Carol's evolving relationship with the hive mind. Zosia's presence isn't merely comforting, as it symbolises the tension between Carol's fierce independence and the seductive, comforting allure of collective acceptance. The others start to feel like something recognisable, especially as Carol spends days and nights with them, learning about how they live and sleep in shared spaces. And narratively, the episode also adds to Manousos' story. After a terrible journey through the Darien Gap and a near-death experience, he wakes in unfamiliar surroundings. But those surroundings don't stall him, as his trajectory is still pointing in the direction of Carol. Although there's the criticism of Pluribus's methodical pacing, I think this deliberate pacing allows the emotional stakes to simmer, prioritising atmosphere and interesting character beats. What makes episode 8 compelling is how it weaves big philosophical questions into the intimate character moments. The kiss scene and other moments force the audience to question the ideas of identity and agency even further. That the hive mind is capable of such profound, tailored intimacy complicates the usual tropes associated with assimilation. So instead of portraying stark dystopia, Pluribus continues to paint something eerily serene and unsettling. I've really enjoyed this season so far, and I just hope that they can nail the landing next week. But that was my spoiler review and explained analysis for Pluribus episode 8. I will be doing a video on my theories and predictions for episode 9, so keep a lookout for that video and stay tuned to my channel for more breakdowns on the show. But to those who have already seen episode 8, what are your thoughts on all the events that went down, and what are your current theories on how things will end up in the final episode of season 1? Let me know down below in the comment section. For much more videos on Vince Gilligan's Pluribus, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.